Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I have a really special topic for you, and that's analytics. I spent the last few weeks trying to find the best analytics tool, and I think I found it. Let's talk about it. My whole research started when I posted that tweet trying to find out what's the best free open source alternative to Google Analytics. And a lot of the comments mentioned Posthog. So let's explore it together. After I landed on this landing page, I was already in love. I love these kind of retro animations, and this one is so awesome. I decided to put it in the intro so you guys can see it and we can talk about Posthog while we watch this cool Godzilla dinosaur tear this city apart. So, why Posthog? Well, first of all, it's used by the many of the biggest orgs in the world, and if I scroll up here a bit, you can see some of them like Y-combinator, DHL, Airbus, and surprisingly Posthog as well, and many others. And why I really liked Posthog is it's not just analytics, it's 8 products in one. So what does that mean? If we scroll down a bit, we can already see some of the features they offer out of the box. And they offer stuff like analytics, product analytics, session replay, feature flags, A/B testing, and more. After spending some time exploring all of these, I'm blown away by how cool all of this is and how well it's packed into a single package. Especially stuff like feature flags, session replays, and A/B testing, which is kind of a hard thing to pull off properly, and they just give it to you out of the box. I'll show you the dashboard later on so you can see what I'm talking about, but this is amazing. They also allow you to auto capture events, which means basically they capture everything that happens on the page automatically. You don't even have to set anything up. You can track input fields, you can track page leaves, page enters, navigations, everything for free, or at least it's free for the first million requests, which is really hard to get to if you're just starting out. And later on, if you see that you're using too many requests, you can disable auto capture, you can be more selective about what you track, and you can always try to optimize your costs, and because it's per request cost, it scales with your business, which is another cool thing. And yeah, that's for the intro, and if you scroll down a bit, you'll just love this landing page. I'd highly recommend that you scroll through it yourself because all of these custom animations are so cool and so fun. And at the bottom, what I love about it the most is it's open source. There's 81,000 people in the developer community. There's over 400 contributors on the repositories, and they have tracked over 100 billion requests, which means this is not just a startup ran out of somebody's garage, legitimate, proven business, and they support a lot of friendly hogs. And the funniest bit is if you scroll down to the bottom, you get this really cool way to buy Posthog 3000, which is on CD of course, and you can insert it into your PC if you're living in year 2000 and watching the video from the past. And yeah, that's enough of my raving about the product, and now let's go to my dashboard, and then I want to show you why I think it's so cool. So if I go to my home page here on my dashboard, this is metrics for our company website called Forge42. I'm gonna link it in the description if you want to check it out, but this tracks everything on it, and we're proudly using Posthog to track activity on our web page. As you can see, it tells you the page view count, tells you the new people here. I've also set up recently session recordings so I can test it out. You can see the detailed metrics that it provides. And yeah, that's it for the dashboard. And the cool thing about it is if I go to activity here, you can basically see all activity going on the page views, page enters. When you click something, everything's tracked for you automatically. You don't really have to do much. And that's just the analytics parts. You can also track them in real time by enabling this. And yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it, but I won't be going over it right now. I want to show you the features it offers and why I love it. So besides analytics, what I love about it even more is feature flags. And if you go to feature flags on the dashboard, you can create your own feature flags. And I won't be using this in this video, but I just wanted to show it to you. You can set it up however you like. You can enable it or disable it here. You can give it a payload. You can set the conditions and match groups or users. You can add some specific conditions, like let's say I wanted to give some feature to somebody who's on the latest browser version or maybe the latest device type. You can even do country codes, country name, and if, for example, let's say I want to provide everybody from the US some special feature, I can set the amount of percentage I want to roll this out to, and I can increase it to this, and then it tells me exactly how many users that I had on the page already would this amount to, and how the condition works. And you even get this ready-to-use code here. You can basically change it to whatever programming language you're using. You can do Node, you can do PHP for the Laravel folks. And yeah, I'm gonna switch back to JavaScript and I'm gonna save this, and we have it set up. And if I wanted to use this, I could basically roll out a feature for only the American folks out there, and the rest of the world gets the old feature or whatever else I set in it. And then you have also A/B testing, which is pretty similar, but you just create your test, and then you have your control group and your test groups. You can add more variants. You can use a feature flag key here as well, because this creates a feature flag behind the scenes as well. And then you can continue with it. And then you can do a conversion funnel or a trend. And yeah, you can set up a lot of stuff here. You can, for example, say I wanna see from a page view to a page leave. I mean, this doesn't make much sense, but you get the point. And then you get the goal preview here. You can play around with these. I'm not gonna go into too many details. There's also surveys that you can do that allow you to ask your users whatever you want. Early access features, data pipelines, and yeah. And that's it for the dashboard. Now, let's get to the cool part, and that's implementing this in your React Router v7, or better known as Remix app. We'll be adding it to the backend, to the front end, and we'll be merging the distinct IDs, and we'll have more fun with it. So the first thing we need is Remix utilities. This package was created by Sergio, and it's pretty great. There's a lot of utilities that we're gonna need. You'll see why I'm adding it to the project soon. But while this gets installed, let's go to our Vite config, and we'll do the following two things here. If you remember from last time, I've added this to show you how to handle environment variables. And today we're gonna do the same, but we're gonna add it for Posthog. We're gonna add the Posthog API key and the Posthog API endpoint. And how we're gonna do this is we're gonna JSON stringify process.environment. The same name. And then we're gonna add commas here and save this. And then, because we want this to be in the environment, we're gonna create a index.d.ts file. And then declare const 2 times, and we're gonna do this, and we're gonna say these are strings. Alright, and we're gonna save this. Then we add this to the tsconfig JSON. I'm gonna add it at the beginning here, index.d.ts, and save this. And then here we're gonna remove the node environment because we won't be needing it, and we're gonna save it. And now here, what I'm gonna do is add Posthog. So before adding it, we first need to basically install Posthog so we can use it. Because we'll be using it both on the front end and on the back end, we're gonna install Posthog node and Posthog.js, and we're gonna run this. After we've added it to the project, the first thing we want to do is initialize it in the entry.client. So that's here. So how do we do that? That's pretty simple. We first add a custom component. So it's called function Posthog init, and what this will have inside is use effect, and it's gonna return nothing, so we don't want to render any UI here. It's just so we can initialize Posthog when the app is hydrated. So we're gonna import Posthog from Posthog.js, and then inside of here, Posthog.js init. And now, because we've added the constants to the define, we're gonna be able to do Posthog API key, and API host is gonna be the Posthog API endpoint. And we're gonna save this. And as you can see, it's not used. So we're gonna copy this and we're gonna go here where the remix browser is, and we're gonna add it here. And we're gonna save this. And this already has tracking possibilities, but we're gonna enhance it even more. So the next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna create a hooks directory, and inside of here, gonna call it use posthog page views.ts, and we're gonna create a utility hook, or rather I'm gonna call it use posthog page view because it's a single page view, and we're gonna do the following. So I'm gonna use my VS Code macro by writing hook and then clicking tab, and then it's gonna create a hook for me, well, the template I have, and we're gonna call it posthog page view. And it's not gonna take any parameters, and we're gonna do the following. First thing we're gonna need is the location from use location hook that's exported from Remix. The next thing we're gonna need is we're going to save the previous location here. And by default, I want it to be the path name that we're on at the moment. And then I'm gonna use an effect that listens to the location and the previous location. And what we're gonna do is, if the path name is different than the previous location, so if we've navigated to somewhere else, I want Posthog to capture an event for me, and we're gonna import it from posthog.js, and I'm gonna import it like a named import instead of a default one. And I'm not gonna provide these parameters, I'm just gonna do page view. Now this is completely up to you what you want to do here. This hook is going to only listen to the previous location and the current one and then trigger, but because we're listening to the whole location object, this can change when you change search parameters, this can change when you change the hash. So it's really up to you how you want to implement this, and when you want to trigger page views. This is the basic implementation that I'm gonna use, but if you feel like you want to do something else, that's completely fine. Feel free to do whatever you want, but for now we're gonna export this, or rather we're already exporting it, and we're gonna remove this return here and save it. Then inside of root, call this. Alright, and the best thing about this is our client side is completely ready. It's going to track all the events for us, and it doesn't just track page views, it tracks button clicks, it tracks a lot of stuff. When you run the app and you check the dashboard, you're gonna be able to see everything it runs. The reason I created this hook instead of just calling page view capture all the time is because I don't want to record duplicate events, because if you use strict mode, this is going to trigger twice. So if you just use posthog.capture, it's gonna trigger the capture event twice, and we don't want to do that. And the safest way to do it is just check the previous location, and because it already triggers when you first land the page, so when you do a document request, we don't really need to do it the first time we're here, so the first time the use effect triggers, so that's why we set the location.path name here. Alright, now the second thing I'm gonna do is, and I'm actually going to create a posthog folder and then move this inside of here. And then another hook I want to use for posthog is use posthog distinct ID sync, and we're gonna create another hook. So this will be a very cool trick. So because we're going to use posthog on the client and on the server, the unique ID for every visitor is going to be different. So what we want to do is, when server has a unique ID and we land on the client, we're going to check if those unique IDs are different, and if they are, we're going to sync them together into the same one, so we know that we're tracking the same user both across the server and across the client. So how do we do that? So we're gonna create a loader data object, and we're gonna say const distinct ID is equal to loader data dot distinct ID, and this can be undefined, so we're gonna do this. And we're also going to say distinct ID is string or undefined. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna delete this return again, we're gonna use effect again, and we're gonna do the following. So we're gonna add the distinct ID here. So what do we want to do here? So whenever the distinct ID changes and we have it, so if we don't have it, we're gonna return here. But if the posthog instance, so we're gonna import it from posthog, and we're gonna change it to named import. If the posthog get distinct ID is equal to distinct ID, we're gonna return here. Otherwise, we're gonna call posthog identify. And what this does, if you hover over it, you can see that it identifies a user with a unique ID instead of a posthog randomly generated distinct ID. If this method is never called, then unique visitors will be identified by a UOU ID that is generated the first time they visit the site. So what this means is, if we already have a distinct ID for the user, we're gonna use that. Otherwise, we're gonna let posthog handle it with a random ID. So if a user is not logged in or you have no way of tracking him, posthog uses a random ID, but if you pass something from a loader back to the client, it's gonna use that. And we're gonna save this, and we're gonna import this in the root as well, and we're gonna save this as well. So now we have a way to sync backend, or rather server and the client, and we have page view recordings here. So the last obviously missing piece is creating the server part. So we go to .server and we create a new folder called posthog, and we're gonna call it init.server.ts, and inside of here we're going to import posthog from posthog node. So we're on the server now, and we want to create a node instance. And now, because we want to only have one instantiated posthog client, we're gonna do let posthog is posthog, and then we're gonna export a function called get posthog instance. So if posthog is not instantiated, we're gonna instantiate it. And we don't want to do it like this. So if you remember in our last video, I created a helper here. So we're gonna do const environment is get server environment, and we're gonna do environment dot posthog API key. Now, because this is not inside of here, we're gonna remove this test here, and we're gonna say posthog API key is a string, and posthog API endpoint is a string as well. And then if you go back to the init, now this is fully type safe, and we're gonna add the host as well, because now we've added it in the config there. We're gonna add it here, and it works. And now we have the singleton that's going to basically give us the posthog instance. Or if you don't want to export it with a get function, what we can do here is say that this is a posthog instance, and then we can do const posthog is get posthog instance and export that as a named export. Or you can remove this and then you just use this. It's up to you. But now that we have the instance, and just for clarity's sake, I'm gonna call it posthog server, so we don't really import it on the client by accident. And what we can do here as well now is create some utilities. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna create a utility called get distinct ID is equal to, and it's gonna take the request. And what we're gonna do is, in the future, we will extend this to possibly use the user as well. So the usual flow would be check if the user is logged in. If logged in, return the user ID. If not logged in, return the IP address. And because we can't yet check if the user is logged in or if he has a valid ID, we're just gonna implement the IP address here. So how we're gonna do that is, this is where remix utils comes in. We use the get client IP address from remix utils, and we're gonna get the IP, and we're gonna also call this get posthog distinct ID because it's distinct ID for posthog, and we're gonna return the IP here. All right, the next utility is going to be capture server event. So let's define the posthog event. So what I've done here is I've created the posthog event because it's not exported. I basically take the first parameter of posthog capture here, and we're gonna do the following. We get the distinct ID. Oh, and we're also going to pass in the request. So request, and then we give it to here, so we get the IP, and we're gonna capture it. If this returns null, we're gonna use crypto, and we're gonna create a not IP. So if the user has no IP address, we return crypto random bytes string. So this will create a random ID. Or actually, let's do random UUID. Now we always return a string here, and that's it. So we're gonna export this, and we're gonna export this, and we're gonna do the following. So we go back to the root, and here, first we're gonna get the distinct ID, get Posthog distinct ID, and then we return that as well. And now that we return this, the hook that syncs the IDs is gonna get called automatically, and we save this, and that's it. Our server and client are synced now. So if we have a user, he will have a unique ID, and usually the IP is always gonna work, so you'll never end up in the crypto use case, but that's just in case. You can also generate your own with math random or whatever if crypto doesn't work on the deployment environment you're deploying to, and this way your loader gets the distinct ID, returns it, and then the client syncs it, and whatever you record automatically gets appended to the distinct ID of the user. But there's one caveat here that you need to be careful of. If you have export const should revalidate here, that can cause issues, because if you somehow update the distinct ID or you change something but the loader doesn't retrigger, then you'll probably have an issue with this not being synced. So be very careful with how you handle it. If this doesn't work for you, you can just move the hooks and the distinct ID somewhere down the line and use it there. But generally this will work in most scenarios. Your client and the server will be synced, and for example, let's say we want to capture an event here, we can go here and capture Posthog server event, and then we go back to the root, and then we do capture Posthog event, and then we say, I don't know, event server page view, and we give it the request. Oh, and the property distinct ID is missing, so you can either provide this one, or because we're fetching it here, so we don't really need to actually provide it, we can just omit it here, and then if we go back to the root where this was called, we can just remove it and it's gonna work. Alright, now let's run this. There's an issue with crypto, and inside of here, instead of crypto, we're gonna use node crypto, and we're gonna save this and remove these. And then if I run our project, the environment variables are loaded successfully, the root is triggered. And one thing I realized after testing this out a bit is I haven't added a unique ID here, because every time I get the IP, it generates a new one. So what we'll also do is we're gonna say let UID is equal to crypto random UID, and we're gonna change this to const because it's a constant, or rather it's not supposed to be changed, and we're gonna return it here. So now if I refresh it a couple of times, it's going to be the same. And the last thing before we end this video that I want to show you is if I go to the browser and I've loaded up my dashboard on Posthog, I can see all my events here. And as you can see, this is the server page view that we recorded. The ID is now the same for both of them. And then we have the page lead and the page view on the client. And if you look at the library here, it says Posthog node and the web. And it even tells you when it's recorded. And if you click stuff on the page and if you do random stuff like that, you can record additional things. You can also record the URL here. I left it out just to show you how you can do stuff, but you can include it here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You have Posthog working. You can use it to do some cool stuff. Later on, I'll do A/B testing and stuff like that, but for now this is enough. I just wanted to show you how it works. I hope you enjoyed this one. It was really fun to make, and I love Posthog. I recently discovered it, but I fell in love with it rather quickly because it's so awesome. Kudos to the whole Posthog team. You did a great job with this. I'm looking forward to the future and seeing what they bring to the table next. And I'm also looking forward to actually exploring it further and playing around with it more. And if you have any more questions, or I left something maybe unclear, feel free to leave me a comment. Consider liking the video, sharing it with others, subscribing to the channel, supporting me in any way you want. And that's it. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one. Bye!